Everyone laughed when I agreed to marry the sickly heir of Prince Jing'an. They said I was 17 and already preparing myself for widowhood. What none of them knew was that in my previous life, that dying man had lived to 90. So when my mother pushed the betrothal card from Prince Jing'an's manor back across the table, I had just opened my eyes after dying at 86. Wantong, we cannot accept this marriage. Mother frowned, her voice unusually firm. The Jing'an household is certainly prestigious, but you know what Yen Lord Zhao's health is like. Physicians all across the capital say his lungs and internal organs were damaged when he was young. They say he may not live past 30. She reached for the rejection letter. You're only 17. If you truly marry him, are you supposed to become a widow in your 20s? I sat on the bed without moving. Outside the window, spring was at its loveliest. Pear blossoms weighed down the branches. When the wind blew, pale petals drifted across the courtyard like scattered snow. I lowered my eyes to my hands. They were soft, smooth. The fingers were slender, without a single callus. These were not the hands I remembered from my previous life, the hands hardened from managing a household, carrying children, nursing sick elders, and working an abacus year after year. I had truly come back. Back to 17. Back to the very day the Gu family had planned to turn down the marriage proposal from Prince Jing'an's manor. In my previous life, I had shaken my head that day. I had disliked Xiao Yinshi for being sickly. I had disliked how thinly populated the main household of the manor was most of all. I had been afraid that if I married him, I would be left a widow while still young. So mother had chosen another marriage for me, Shen Xiuan, the eldest son of the Shen family. He was healthy, handsome, and already a successful provincial examination graduate at 19. Everyone said he had a brilliant future ahead of him. I married him. Only later did I learn that a marriage praised by everyone else did not necessarily lead to a happy life. The Shen family was enormous. On the third day after my wedding, I was handed control of the household. In the second year, my mother-in-law fell ill, and I attended her morning and evening. In the third year, my sister-in-law married, and I arranged her entire dowry. In the fourth year, Shen Xiuan received an official posting outside the capital, and I followed him while 6 months pregnant. My first labor was difficult. I gave birth to a daughter. My mother-in-law smiled and said she adored the child. Then, almost immediately, she began urging me to have another. The second was another daughter. The third pregnancy ended in miscarriage. The fourth gave me a son. I thought I could finally breathe. I was wrong. My son had to be educated. My daughters had to be married. My husband's career had to be supported. My parents-in-law had to be cared for. There were clan obligations, weddings, funerals, favors, gifts, household expenses, servants, properties. Everything came to me. Shen Xiuan was not a bad man. At least, everyone said he was a good husband. He never struck me, never cursed me. He never favored a concubine wife. Whenever I became so tired that I could barely keep going, he would always say gently, "You've worked hard, my wife." Then he would turn around and continue with his own affairs. I lived to 86. Everyone who saw me said the same things. Old Madame Shen is truly blessed. So many children and grandchildren. Her husband always respected her. What a worthwhile life she has lived. Only I knew that when I lay dying, I could no longer remember what food I had loved most as a girl. A few days before my death, one of my great-grandsons ran into my room and mentioned that Prince Jing'an's manor was holding a funeral. I asked casually, "Who died?" "The old heir of the Jing'an household, Xiao Yinshi," he said. He lived to 90. They say he went to sleep last night and simply never woke again. A peaceful death. I stared at him for a very long time. 90? That sickly man everyone had insisted would die before 30? He had lived to 90. He had even outlasted me. The healthy, promising husband I had chosen instead had died at 72. Xiao Yinshi had lived 18 years longer. Before I could fully process the absurdity of it, I closed my eyes. And when I opened them again, I was 17. Mother touched my forehead. What is it? Did you sleep badly last night? I abruptly caught her wrist. Mother. She startled. Don't reject the Jing'an marriage. What? I threw back the covers, climbed out of bed, and slapped my palm over the already written rejection letter. I'll marry him. Mother's eyes widened. Wantong, have you lost your mind? Only a few days ago, when I mentioned young Lord Xiao, you said he looked half dead. That was true. In my previous life, I had disliked him very much. But now, so what if he looked half dead? The man lived to 90. My supposedly robust first husband had only made it to 72. Looked at that way, the seemingly fragile lifetime meal ticket offered by Prince Jing'an's manor was remarkably reliable. I cleared my throat. I've thought it over. The Shen family may be respectable, but there are too many people in that household and too many rules. The main household at Prince Jing'an's manor is simple. The princess has only one son. If I marry there, at least I won't have to spend every day dealing with endless sisters-in-law, aunts, cousins, and female relatives. Mother laughed in disbelief. You're choosing a husband based on how few relatives he has. Fewer people means more peace. And what about Xiao Yinshi's health? I paused. I could hardly tell her that he would outlive most of us. So I put on my most serious expression. Physicians aren't the king of hell. Just because they say someone won't live past 30 doesn't mean the man will drop dead on his 30th birthday. Mother still wanted to argue. Father was summoned. After hearing what I wanted, he sat silently for a long time. Have you truly thought this through? If you marry him and something happens 3 or 5 years from now, what will you do then? I looked at him. In my previous life, Father had sat before me in almost the same way before my wedding. He had carefully explained why Shen Xiuan was such a good choice. The Shen family had prospects. Xiuan was healthy. The Shen family had a respectable reputation. Every individual point had been correct. Yet somehow, when all of those correct things were placed together, I had not lived a particularly happy life. Father, I said softly, no one is guaranteed anything in this life. At least this time, I want to choose for myself. The room fell silent. Mother stared at me for a long moment. Slowly, her eyes reddened. You child, why are you suddenly saying things like this? I smiled and wrapped my arms around hers. Mother, I simply figured something out. I'm the one who has to live my life. Other people can't live it for me. Father did not try to persuade me again. The rejection letter was torn up that afternoon. Someone arrived from Prince Jing'an's manor, not a matchmaker, but Xiao Yinshi's personal attendant. He delivered his master's message with impeccable courtesy. The young lord says that once the engagement is formally settled, regret becomes much more difficult. Before the betrothal is finalized, he wishes to meet Miss Gu once. I nearly laughed into my tea. Perfect. I wanted to meet him too. I wanted to see exactly how sick this supposedly dying man who would live to 90 actually looked. The first time I truly sat across from Xiao Yinshi, he was coughing. Not the dramatic sort of coughing one heard about in plays, where the sickly nobleman opened his mouth and immediately coughed blood into a handkerchief. His cough was quiet and restrained, but it lasted long enough to bring a faint redness to the corners of his eyes. He wore a pale moon-white robe. His shoulders were slender. His complexion was so fair that there was almost no color in it. Yet he did not seem listless. On the contrary, he sat very straight. A bowl of medicine, half finished, stood beside him. When I entered, he rose. My hand lifted instinctively. Sit. He looked at me. Only then did I realize that ordering a man to sit down during our first private meeting might not be particularly maidenly of me. So I sat too. That solved the problem. Only 2 maids remained in the warm chamber, standing far enough away to give us some privacy. Xiao Yinshi did not waste time. Miss Gu, if you regret this marriage now, there is still time. I had expected that. Why should I regret it? You know about my health. I do. I may not live long. I almost lost control of my expression. Not live long? If 90 was considered a short life, half the elderly people in the capital would crawl out of their ancestral graves just to argue with him. I lowered my eyes and took a sip of tea. What else? Xiao Yinshi seemed surprised. What else? You didn't arrange a meeting with me merely to say you're in poor health. He was quiet for a moment. I cannot promise children. I also may not be able to accompany my wife outside as often as an ordinary husband. In winter, I spend most of my time inside my courtyard. Excellent. He finally looked directly at me. Excellent? I nodded. If you don't go out, there's less trouble. Silence. I suppressed my smile. How many times a day do you take medicine? Twice. Seasonal changes are hardest? Early winter and the beginning of spring. Can you walk? Yes. Can you manage affairs? Yes. Can you read accounts? Yes. Can you feed yourself? His brow finally furrowed. Of course I can. Then what exactly is the problem? I spoke quite seriously. It isn't as though you're lying in bed unable to move. If I marry you, I won't need to sit beside you every day spoon-feeding you porridge. Xiao Yinshi stared at me for a long time. Then he smiled. Only slightly, but the faint smile softened his entire cold, pale face. Miss Gu is rather different from what I imagined. What did you imagine? I thought you would tell me you did not mind. I do mind. I answered without hesitation. He froze. I mind if you run a fever every few nights and keep me awake. I mind if you refuse to follow the physician's instructions and leave me to clean up the consequences. And I mind if your household is full of trouble and you expect me to handle all of it alone. I finished in one breath. So I think it is better to discuss these things before we marry. The chamber became so quiet that I could hear charcoal crack in the brazier. Xiao Yinshi lowered his eyes toward the medicine bowl beside him. After a moment, he asked, "Then what sort of life does Miss Gu want?" That question stopped me. No one had ever asked me that in my previous life. Mother had asked what sort of man I wanted to marry. Father had asked what I wanted in my dowry. Shinshiwan had asked which courtyard I preferred. But no one had ever asked me, "What sort of life do you want?" I looked out the window. Beyond the warm chamber lay an empty patch of freshly turned earth. I want to wake up late. Fine. Unless the sky is falling, no one is to wake me before the morning hour is well underway. Fine. I can learn to manage the household, but everything cannot simply be thrown at me. Fine. I don't like paying respects 3 times a day. My mother doesn't either. My eyes brightened. Really? She wakes later than you do. For the first time, I felt with absolute certainty that I had chosen the correct marriage. I looked out the window again. You could plant 2 osmanthus trees there. Xiao Yinshi followed my gaze. Osmanthus trees grow slowly. The words slipped out before I could stop them. By the time you're 60, they'll surely shade half the courtyard. The room suddenly went very still. My heart tightened, too fast. I had said that far too naturally. Xiao Yinshi slowly turned to look at me. His eyes were deep and unreadable. He did not ask why I sounded so certain. He only said, 60? I forced myself to nod. 60 isn't especially old. Who knows, you might even live to 90. He watched me for a long time. Then he said quietly, I'll borrow your good fortune. 3 days later, Prince Jingen's manor formally delivered the betrothal gifts. The engagement was settled. On the day the betrothal became official, I was walking through the rear garden when I encountered second Madame Zhao, who had come from the Jingen household to deliver gifts. She held my hand warmly. What a good girl. Our Yinshi is fortunate to marry you. I smiled politely. She sighed. His health is what it is. In the future, I'm afraid you'll have to be patient with him. A young man stood beside her. His eyes and features bore some resemblance to Xiao Yinshi. Second Madame Zhao introduced him. This is Mingjin, Yinshi's younger cousin. Yinshi was often ill when they were children. Mingjin frequently went to the main household to read with him. The 2 boys have always been very close. Xiao Mingjin bowed to me. His manners were flawless, but the way he looked at me was strange. Not contemptuous, not ingratiating, more like someone studying a person whose existence might directly affect his future interests. I had lived a very long life once already. I knew that sort of gaze. I said nothing then. When I returned to my room, I asked Mother, are the second branch and the main household very close? Of course. Yinshi has always been weak, and Prince Jingen died years ago. I've heard the princess has kept the second branch's 3rd son close for many years. Why? Mother hesitated. What other reason could there be? If Yinshi truly has no children, they will eventually have to adopt an heir from the clan. I slowly set down my teacup. So that was it. The man was still alive, and they had already chosen a son for him. No wonder Xiao Mingjin had looked at me that way. What none of them could possibly know was that this cousin who was supposedly about to die had decades and decades left to live. On my wedding day, a light rain fell over the capital. The bridal sedan traveled all the way to Prince Jingen's manor. Crowds had gathered outside to watch. Even through the curtain, I could hear them. Misgu really married him. What a pity! With young Lord Zhao's health, I'm afraid the rest went unsaid. I knew what they meant, a living widow. I sat steadily inside the sedan. I even had the leisure to run my fingers over the wooden wall. The Jingen bridal sedan was sturdier than the Shen families had been in my previous life. At least every pothole did not rattle my skull. During the wedding ceremony, Xiao Yinshi looked even paler than usual, but he remained standing through the entire ritual. When we returned to the bridal chamber, the first thing he did was sit down and drink his medicine. I lifted my own veil just in time to see him. He stared. Why did you lift it yourself? It was heavy. I began removing the phoenix crown too. If I wear this any longer, my neck is going to break. He laughed. Nothing earth-shattering happened that night. We sat beside the bed and ate something, talked for a little while, then we went to sleep in the same bed. Of course, it was simply a very large bed, and there were 2 separate quilts between us. I slept wonderfully. When I woke the next morning, daylight already filled the room. I stared at the bed curtains for several breaths, then I remembered this was the second morning after my wedding. By the rules of my previous life, I should already have been fully dressed and waiting outside my mother-in-law's courtyard to pay my respects. I shot upright. The place beside me was empty. I called for someone. Chingdai, my maid, hurried inside. The young madam is awake. What time is it? Nearly mid-morning. I drew in a sharp breath. Mother's courtyard. The princess has not risen yet. I stared at her. Chingdai smiled. The young lord specifically told us that you were tired last night and were not to be woken. At that moment, I felt genuine conviction settle over me. I had married well. By the time I finished washing and dressing at my leisure, Princess Chui had also just risen. She was in her early 40s and very well preserved. Her eyes and brows resembled Xiaoyanqi's. The first thing she asked me was, "Did you sleep well last night?" I nodded. Very well. She smiled. Good. She did not ask whether we had consummated the marriage. She did not ask why I had slept late. She did not ask why I had waited until nearly mid-morning to pay my respects. Half the stone hanging over my heart finally dropped. The other half rose immediately after breakfast, because Princess Chui ordered 4 enormous chests of account books carried into the room. These are the household accounts from the past 3 years. From today onward, you can begin reviewing them slowly. I stared at the 4 chests. My skull buzzed. This was exactly how I had worked myself to death in my previous life. Second day after the wedding, take over the household. Third day, memorize relatives and social obligations. Fifth day, inspect the storerooms. 10th day, begin handling clan affairs. I had spent 60 years being the perfect wife. Not again. I immediately sat straighter. Mother, I don't want to manage them yet. The room fell silent. Princess Chui froze. Second Madame Zhao, who happened to be sitting nearby, froze too. Zhao recovered first and laughed. Sister-in-law, Wantang is young and has only just married in. Naturally, the accounts seem intimidating. She'll feel differently in a few days. I looked at her. No, it isn't because I'm intimidated. I simply don't want to. Her smile stiffened. Princess Chui did not become angry. She only asked, "Surely you cannot refuse to manage the household forever?" I can learn gradually. I was perfectly calm. I'll manage my own courtyard first. You already manage the entire inner household very well. Why should everything be transferred to me the moment I marry in? You're not ill. Princess Chui was silent for several breaths. Then she laughed. That is also true. Second Madame Zhao's expression shifted. But if the young madam does not learn early, once affairs become more complicated, then I'll deal with them when they become more complicated. I smiled. On the way back to my courtyard, I felt several pounds lighter. Then I walked through the door, another stack of ledgers waiting on the table. My face fell. Didn't we just agree that I wasn't taking over the household? Xiaoyanqi sat beside the window drinking tea. These belong to our courtyard. I was silent. Then I walked over and flipped through them. Monthly allowances, medicine, servants, cloth, rewards, and an entire mountain of miscellaneous expenses. My eyes hurt after 2 pages. I collapsed face down on the table. Reading accounts on the day of marriage. I regret marrying you. Xiao Yinshi looked at me then. Without saying a word, he reached over and gathered the ledgers away. My head shot up. What are you doing? Didn't you say you wanted an easier life after marrying me? Yes. Then don't read them today. Otherwise, it would look as though I tricked you into marriage. I stared at him, then burst out laughing. Sometimes this man said ridiculous things with such a straight face that they became twice as funny. The first month of our marriage passed slowly. I only managed our own courtyard. If I wanted to sleep, I slept. If I wanted to read storybooks, I read them. Xiao Yinshi's poor health meant his life was regulated with almost absurd precision. He rose at the same time each morning, took his medicine, ate breakfast, reviewed accounts for an hour, rested, napped at noon, walked in the afternoon, and never, under any circumstances, remained awake past late evening. After watching him for several days, I finally asked, "Do you live like this every single day?" More or less. I understood immediately. There was a reason this man lived to 90. Other nobles stayed up drinking, hunted on horseback, and treated their bodies as if they were indestructible. This one cultivated his health as if his life depended on it, which, admittedly, it did. Our peaceful life lasted exactly 18 days. Then second uncle Xiao Qinzhen came to visit. He made a suggestion. Mingjin is attending the clan school now. Going back and forth every day is inconvenient. Why not let him move into the main household? He can also keep Yinshi company. I was eating a pastry at those words. I took another bite and slowly raised my head. There it was. The reserve son. Apparently, it was time for him to formally move in. When Xiao Qinzhen proposed bringing Mingjin into the main household, Princess Cui was the first to nod. That would be good. Mingjin has been close to Yinshi since childhood. If he moves here, the brothers can keep one another company. I did not respond immediately. I finished the chestnut cake in my hand. Xiao Qinzhen noticed my silence and smiled. The young madam has only just entered the family, so naturally you don't know all the history. When Yinshi was at his sickest as a child, Mingjin spent years by his side. It may be improper to say so, but that boy has long been almost like part of the main household. Family. What a useful word. I had heard it for 60 years in my previous life. My sister-in-law needed money, we were family. A clan uncle wanted us to secure a position for his son, we were family. Some distant female cousin needed to live in our home for half a year, family. In my experience, we are family usually meant one thing: your possessions could be shared with me, my responsibilities did not need to be shared with you. I wiped my fingers. If Mingjin moves into the main household, what exactly is his status here? The room went quiet. Xiao Qingyin's smile faded slightly. Naturally, he is Yenshi's nephew. Then why can't he live with the second branch? The main household is closer to the clan school. It saves only about 15 minutes of walking. Xiao Qinzhen looked at me. I looked back. So the young madam is unwilling. It isn't that I'm unwilling. I simply want things made clear first. I turned to Princess Cui. Mother, over the years, have most of Mingjin's school fees, writing lessons, archery lessons, and clothing been paid from the main household? Princess Cui paused. Some of them. Why? She did not immediately answer. Xiao Qinzhen answered for her. We're all one family. Why divide things so precisely? Of course. I smiled. If he is merely a nephew, his own parents should naturally support him. Second uncle and second aunt are both alive and well. Why should his aunt be raising him instead? Xiao Qing'an's expression darkened. Are you accusing our branch of taking advantage? I said no such thing. I am only asking for clarity. I set down my tea. If Mingjin is simply a nephew, then he should be treated according to the customs for a nephew. If he is being raised as a future adopted heir, then that should also be stated clearly. The room became completely silent. Princess Cui snapped her head toward me. Xiao Qingzhen frowned. How can such a matter be discussed now? Why can't it? I looked at him. Yanqi is only 22. We have been married for less than a month. We do not even know whether we will have children yet, and already someone else's son is to be moved into the main household and supported according to the standards of a future heir. Isn't that a little early? Xiao Qingzhen opened his mouth. I did not give him the chance. If Mingjin merely wishes to spend time with his cousin, he is welcome. He can come for meals. He can come here to study. But he should continue living in his own home. Parents should raise their own children. That keeps everything clear. Princess Cui remained silent. I knew why she hesitated. She was afraid. Xiao Yanqi had nearly died when he was 7. According to what I had heard, the household had come close to preparing his coffin. From that day onward, every time he coughed, his mother probably imagined the worst. I did not blame her. But fear did not justify arranging the rest of a living man's life as if he were already dead. Xiao Qingzhen finally left in a very poor mood. Mingjin did not move into the main household. Beginning the next day, part of his food, clothing, and school expenses were also returned to the second branch. That evening, I ate with Xiao Yanqi. He was unusually quiet. I watched him several times. Are you unhappy? No. Then you are. He raised his eyes. How do you know? You normally drink half a bowl of soup with dinner. You haven't touched it tonight. His gaze followed mine down to the untouched bowl. Then he actually laughed. I'm simply not used to it. Not used to what? No one ever asked before. Asked what? What status Mingjin was supposed to have in the main household. I put down my chopsticks. What about you? Did you want him to move in? He was quiet. After a moment, he said, when I was at my sickest as a child, mother barely slept. Second uncle suggested bringing Mingjin to live beside her. He said that if one day, I finished the sentence for him. If one day you died. He nodded. Then she would not have to choose an heir from the clan afterward. Something tightened painfully in my chest. A 7-year-old child lying in bed coughing so badly that everyone thought he might die, and the adults around him were already discussing who would replace him when he was gone. He survived to 20, yet that had followed him like a shadow all those years. No wonder his temperament was so detached. Perhaps he had simply grown accustomed to not fighting for things. I picked up a piece of fish and placed it in his bowl. You're still alive? Yes. Then you should decide how to live your own life. He looked at the fish in his bowl. After a while, he said, "Thank you for today." Don't thank me yet. I bit into a piece of greens. Your courtyard accounts are still full of ridiculous expenses. If I truly start cleaning them up, your second uncle will probably come back. That's fine. You're not afraid I'll cut off the escape route you might need in the future? He looked at me. I'm more afraid of still being alive while everyone else has already divided up my future. I smiled. Good. At least the two of us were on the same side. Another half-month passed, then I began feeling sleepy. At first, I assumed it was simply spring fatigue. Then even my favorite steamed milk custard made me nauseous. Qingdai panicked and immediately summoned the household physician. He checked my pulse for a very long time. Then he smiled and rose. "Congratulations, young lord." "Congratulations, young madam." I stared at him. Xiao Yinqi stared too. The physician stroked his beard. "It is a pregnancy pulse." I looked down at my perfectly flat stomach. Only one thought remained in my mind: wait, what happened to my peaceful retirement? It had only been 3 months. How was I already pregnant? The day news of my pregnancy spread, the entire Jing'an household behaved as though they were celebrating the new year. Princess Cui had not even finished lunch before she ordered 6 new matrons carried into our courtyard. I stood outside watching servants and matrons stream in. "What are those for?" She looked at me as though the answer were obvious. "For the matrons. 6. 2 to supervise your food, 2 for your daily care, 1 to follow you during the day, and 1 to watch over you at night." My vision almost went dark. "Mother, I am pregnant. I am not paralyzed." Princess Cui fell silent. In the end, I kept 2 matrons. The other 4 were sent back. It was the first small disagreement between Princess Cui and me over the child. She believed a pregnant woman should not walk too much, should not eat cold food, should not touch scissors, should not enter the garden. Ideally, she should spend each day lying still. After several days, my back ached so badly I could barely tolerate it. Finally, I said, "Mother, if I keep lying down like this, my legs will stop working before I ever give birth." She frowned sternly. "You're young. You don't understand." I looked at her, then I asked, "When you were pregnant with Yinqi, did you lie in bed all day too?" She paused. "That was, you managed the old princess's accounts for 2 months while pregnant." She stopped talking. I smiled. "So please don't treat me like porcelain. I know you're afraid." Her expression changed. I took her hand. "But I'm not Yinqi, and this child is not 7-year-old Yinqi either. We are both fine." She stayed quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, "If you feel uncomfortable, you must tell me immediately." I nodded. The second branch sent many congratulatory gifts. Second Madame Zhao was particularly warm. But one day, while she was talking with Princess Cui, I happened to overhear her say, "If the first child is a girl, that is fine too. A flower before the fruit. There will still be time to consider the matter of succession." I was sitting behind a screen eating preserved plums. My hand stopped. So they truly had not given up. I did not storm out. I did not argue. I simply bit down on the plum hard enough to make it crack between my teeth. That evening, my pregnancy sickness became terrible. I could eat almost nothing. Xiao Yinqi ordered plain porridge. 2 mouthfuls later, I vomited. He replaced it with delicate pastries. No. Then I caught the scent of the medicinal preserved plums beside him. Sour, sweet, suddenly I wanted them. "Give me those." He looked up. "They're medicinal plums." "I know. You may not like them." I had already taken one. A quarter of an hour later, the entire plate was empty. When I finally looked up, Xiao Yinqi was staring at it. I felt slightly guilty. "Did you still want some?" "It's fine." "They were your medicinal plums." "Yes." I ate all of them. I noticed. I rubbed my stomach. The next day, 3 huge jars arrived in our courtyard. I stared. What is all this? Xiao Yinxi was reading. Medicinal plums. This many? You liked them yesterday. What if I finish all of these too? He did not even lift his eyes from the page. Then I'll buy more. I stood there and for some reason, I smiled. Xun Xiuan had also bought me many things in my previous life. Jewelry, cloth, tonics. There had been nothing wrong with any of them. Yet I remembered very few moments like this. Perhaps what stayed in a person's heart was never the value of a gift. It was the feeling that someone had actually noticed. When I was 5 months pregnant, the household physician frowned while checking my pulse. My heart jumped. What is it? He checked again. Young madam, have you been unusually tired recently? Yes. And your abdomen seems somewhat larger than is typical for 5 months. I looked down. It did. Princess Chui went pale. Is something wrong with the child? The physician hurriedly waved his hand. No, no. This old man simply believes, he hesitated. There may be more than one. The entire room went still. I was the first to speak. What do you mean? More than one? The physician smiled. It may be twins. My first reaction was not joy. I looked down at my stomach. One was already more than I had planned. How had I somehow received a buy one get one free arrangement? The day I gave birth was even more chaotic. When the first child finally emerged, I was fairly certain I had cursed all 8 generations of Xiao Yinxi's ancestors. The midwife carried the baby outside. A young lady. I had barely exhaled before the midwife shouted again. Young madam, don't sleep. There's another one. I nearly fainted on the spot. When a second newborn cry filled the room, I lay there with only one thought: who exactly had claimed a sickly man could not have children? Come out. I promised I would not beat him to death. Probably. My first pregnancy gave me 2 daughters. The elder was named Xiaolingyi, the younger Xiaolingjia. Xiao Yinxi chose both names during my confinement month. Princess Chui carried the babies almost every day. My darling, my precious girl, grandmother's little treasure. But at night, I sometimes still heard her sigh. One day, second Madame Zhao tried to comfort her. Sister-in-law, don't worry. Wantong is young. There will surely be sons in the next pregnancy. And if there truly aren't, there are still Mingjin and Mingche. I heard her from the inner room and suddenly I was irritated. My babies were barely a month old. Why was everyone already planning my next pregnancy? I pushed aside the curtain and stepped out. Princess Chui looked uncomfortable. Second Madame Zhao remained composed. Why has the young madam come out? I heard second aunt discussing my next pregnancy. I smiled. So I thought I should come listen. She hurried to explain. I'm only thinking of the household. Daughters are naturally precious, but the ancestral line. I looked down at Lingyi in my arms. She slept soundly. One tiny hand clutched the edge of my robe. Then I raised my head. She was not born to prepare the way for a younger brother. Second Madame Zhao froze. I continued. Whether I have another child and when is between Yinxi and me. These 2 girls are barely a month old. Second aunt truly does not need to worry on our behalf. Her expression tightened. Princess Chui did not defend her. She only lowered her head and played with Lingjia. After that day, second Madame Zhao never mentioned giving me a son in front of me again. But the clan still whispered. At the twins' 1-month celebration, an elderly woman from the Shao clan smiled at me. The young madam is blessed. 2 children at once. Someone beside her added, it would have been even better if both were boys. Before I could speak, Xiao Yinchi took one daughter from my arms. Daughters are good too. His voice was mild. The speaker gave an awkward laugh. Of course. Of course they are. That night, both babies cried in turns. The wet nurse held one, the other cried. She switched them, the first began crying again. I was so tired my eyes ached. At last, I fell asleep sitting against the headboard. When I woke again, the room was silent. I opened my eyes. Xiao Yinchi sat at the edge of the bed. One daughter rested in each arm. Both were asleep. His posture was obviously inexperienced. His back was stiff. I could not help laughing. Why didn't you call the nurses? I did. They couldn't settle them. And you could? By coincidence. I looked at the 2 sleeping babies, then at him. You're not healthy yourself. Aren't you tired holding them that long? Yes. Then why haven't you put them down? He looked down at them. You've already woken 6 times tonight. I stared. You counted? Yes. So you sleep. I'll hold them for a while. Something strange stirred inside me. I had also had children in my previous life. Shin Shiwan had not refused to hold them, but whenever a baby cried in the middle of the night, my mother-in-law always said, men have important work during the day. Do not disturb him. Eventually, I accepted that as natural. Yet now, the man everyone insisted needed to be cared for was sitting beside my bed holding 2 babies so that I could sleep. I reached out and touched Lingy's cheek. My chest softened. After the 2 girls were born, the second branch became even warmer on the surface. In reality, I gradually discovered something. The annual expenses for Xiao Mingjin and Xiao Mingche were far higher than the expenses for my own daughters. Private tutors, riding and archery, horses, social obligations, clothing, even the reward money they carried when attending banquets, more than half of it was charged to the main household. I flipped through the accounts for half a day, then shoved the abacus away. Why? Xiao Yinchi looked up from his book. What? I slapped the ledger in front of him. They are not my sons. Why am I paying to raise them? He read 2 pages, then said very calmly, then don't. I stared at him. You mean that? Yes. My spirits rose instantly. Excellent. My confinement month had made my bones feel rusted. At last, there was something worth moving for. The first thing I did after leaving confinement was not take over the entire household. Instead, I reorganized the Jing'an accounts. Main household expenses, second branch expenses, common clan expenses, separate ledgers for each. In the past, everything had been mixed together. All the second branch needed to say was, we are one family, and the bill would somehow land with the main household. I ordered the accountants to create new books. The next month, Mingjin's tutor fees were returned to the second branch. His horse expenses were returned. The cost of his new riding clothes was returned. Second Madame Zhao arrived very quickly. She sat across from me with a strained smile. Wonton? Could the accountants have made a mistake? No. Mingjin's tutor fees have always been paid by the main household. That was before. This is now. Finally, she could no longer restrain herself. But he is still a son of the Jing'an clan. There are many sons in the Jing'an clan. If the main household pays all their school fees, mother may have to sell her dowry. Her expression darkened. So now you only care about your own 2 daughters. My daughters are naturally my responsibility. Second aunt's sons should naturally be second aunt's responsibility. The words were blunt. Her face finally fell completely. Our branch has done plenty for the main household over the years. Then list it. Anything that should properly be paid from the clan account, I will pay in full. And anything that properly belongs to the second branch should no longer be pushed onto us. She was too angry to answer for several breaths. Then she rose and swept out. That evening, Xiaoyanqi asked, "Second aunt came?" "Yes." "You argued?" "No." She looked unhappy. That means she was in a bad mood. It has nothing to do with me. He laughed. I continued turning pages in the ledger, then I asked, "Besides the court stipend, what properties does this household own?" "A few estates, 2 bookshops, a medicinal herb farm." "Who manages them?" "I do." My head lifted. "You?" "Yes." "Can your health handle that?" "I read the accounts. I do not personally carry the goods." I had no answer. Fair enough. Being sickly did not mean he was stupid. I took his business accounts and read through them. Very quickly, I discovered that his management was far more meticulous than I had expected. He knew which books sold best in the shops, where their paper and ink came from, which section of the herb farm had produced a poor harvest that year. He knew all of it. And suddenly I understood something else about why he had lived to 90 in my previous life. It was not merely that he knew how to preserve his health. He simply never forced himself to do what his body could not withstand. He knew what he could do and what he could not. It had taken me 60 years in my previous life to learn the same thing. Gradually, we began reviewing accounts together. I handled the inner household, he handled the outside properties. After we separated the second branch's expenses, the manor saved an astonishing amount every month. I stared happily at the numbers. At this rate, I can enjoy the court stipend for many more years. Xiaoyanqi looked at me. "Did you marry me just to eat from the royal stipend?" I did not lift my head. More or less. He was not even offended. He pushed another ledger toward me. "Then let us earn more. You can eat longer." I looked up. "Exactly. How old do you intend to keep feeding me?" He considered the question. "After 90, we can negotiate again." My hand jerked. I nearly spilled my tea. Why did he have to mention 90? I forced a laugh. "You certainly have ambitions." "So do you." That autumn, I became sleepy again. This time, I had experience. Qingdai did not even need to call the physician first. I simply extended my wrist. "Go ahead." The physician blinked. "Go ahead with what?" "Check my pulse." A few moments later, he smiled from ear to ear. "Congratulations, young madam." My face was expressionless. "I'm pregnant again." "Yes." Xiaoyanqi stood nearby. He looked at me. I looked at him. We were both silent. Princess Cui, on the other hand, nearly snapped her prayer beads with joy. Then my belly grew. The physician checked my pulse for a long time one day. His expression became peculiar. A terrible sense of foreboding crept over me. "Don't tell me." He gave me an apologetic smile. "I'm afraid, twins again." I closed my eyes. Excellent. Had I offended the goddess of fertility in my previous life? Why was she apparently determined to reimburse me with interest? Before my second labor, the entire household became anxious. Princess Chui burned incense every day. Xiao Yanqi was worse. 3 midwives, 2 physicians, hot water prepared at all hours. I stared at the preparations around the courtyard. I did not feel like a woman about to give birth. I felt like a general preparing for war. Fortunately, the second labor was easier than the first. The first child arrived, a boy. The second, another boy. When the midwife carried the 2 swaddled infants outside, the courtyard became silent for one stunned breath. Then Princess Chui burst into tears, real tears. She held both grandsons and laughed through them. Good. Good. They're both good. I lay inside, too exhausted to move a finger, but I knew one thing very clearly. The second branch's dream of providing the future adopted heir had just shattered. Later, Qingdai told me that second Madame Zhao had arrived with congratulatory gifts that day. Her smile had looked more painful than crying. I had very little interest in enjoying the sight, because once a household contained 4 young children, life became a disaster. The 2 older girls had just learned to run. The 2 baby boys cried every day. Our courtyard was noisy from morning until night. Sometimes my head hurt merely from hearing them. And that winter, Xiao Yanqi fell ill. At first, it was only a cough. I did not worry. He was like that every winter. On the 3rd day, he developed a fever. The physician changed his prescription. On the 4th day, the fever still did not break. I sat beside the bed for the first time. The number 90 from my previous life was no longer enough to reassure me, because this life was already different. In my previous life, he had not married me. At least I had never heard that he had a wife or children. But in this life, we had married. We had 4 children. The household accounts had changed. The second branch's path had changed. Then what about his lifespan? Could that remain exactly the same? I did not know. And for the first time, that uncertainty frightened me. That night, his fever left him confused. I changed the damp cloth on his forehead again and again. The physician said he was not yet in true danger. I still could not sleep. Near dawn, his fever finally eased. When he opened his eyes, the first thing he asked was, "The children?" My nose stung. "They're all alive." He seemed not to notice my tone. Then he asked, "Why haven't you slept?" I finally snapped. "You're this sick, and you're still worrying about everyone else." He froze. My eyes burned. "Xiao Yanqi, if you hide feeling unwell from me again, I will burn every account book in your study." He actually smiled. "You couldn't bear to." "Why not?" "Some of those books contain the calculations for your precious stipend." I wanted to hit him. Unfortunately, I did not dare. So I glared. He was silent for a moment. Then he said, "I'm sorry." I stopped. I've been ill for so many years. I became accustomed to thinking there was no reason to mention it. I won't do that again. I said nothing. He looked at me. His voice was still hoarse. "Because now someone is waiting for me to live a little longer." My nose suddenly burned so badly that I turned away to wring out the cloth. I did not want him to see my eyes. And it was from that day onward that I finally understood something. I wanted Xiao Yinxi to live to 90, but it was no longer because I thought of him as a reliable lifetime meal ticket. I truly wanted to watch those two osmanthus trees grow with him. I wanted to watch our children grow. I wanted to watch my own hair turn white. I even wanted to see whether 90-year-old Xiao Yinxi would still be this irritatingly sharp-tongued. After he recovered, I did something I would never have volunteered for before. I took over part of his accounts. Only part, the rest went to two newly promoted stewards. When Xiao Yinxi saw the arrangement, he asked, "Didn't you say you didn't want to work yourself to exhaustion?" "I don't." "Then why do this?" I lifted my head. "Because this is our home." He paused. I added, "I'm helping you because I want to, not because I'm your wife and therefore naturally required to exhaust myself for you. Those are two different things." He looked at me for a long time. "I understand." I did not know whether he truly understood every part of it, but at the very least, he never treated anything I did as though he were automatically entitled to it. At the end of winter, the two osmanthus trees were finally planted in our courtyard. I stopped when I saw them. "You really planted them?" "Yes." "When?" "The second month after we married." "How did I not know?" "You were busy vomiting." I had no response. I walked over and touched one of the trunks. It was still thin, barely thicker than my wrist. Someone had even placed a stone table nearby. I could not resist asking, "Isn't it a little early for the table?" "Osmanthus grows slowly." I stopped. Those were the words he had said the first time we met. I looked up. "You remember?" "Yes." "You didn't believe me then." "Now I believe half." "Which half?" 60. I smiled. "What about 90? "That depends on you." "What does it have to do with me?" "You said you wanted to see what I looked like when I was old." He lowered his eyes to mine. "Then you'll have to stay and watch." Wind moved through the bare branches. There were not even leaves yet, and still, I suddenly thought those words sounded better than any oath of eternal love. I never told him I loved him. He never told me either. But from that day onward, something between us had changed. When he coughed too hard, I frowned. When I stared at accounts too long, he took away my abacus. When a child cried in the middle of the night, whoever woke first picked them up. If I wanted steamed milk custard from the Southern District, he sent someone to buy it. If he wanted a quiet afternoon to read, I sent all 4 children to Princess Chui's courtyard. She would complain that we were unfilial while holding the grandchildren so tightly she refused to give them back. Meanwhile, the second branch became increasingly unsettled after my 2 sons were born. Xiao Mingjin grew much quieter. His father had told him since childhood, "You are different from the others. One day, you may enter the main household. You may become Yanxi's son." Now that road had abruptly disappeared. For a time, he seemed not to know where his life was supposed to go. Xiao Mingche reacted in the opposite way. He began spending more time at the shops his mother had bought as part of her dowry. Once, he even came to ask me how to separate accounts properly. I did not ask why. I simply taught him the basics. He learned quickly. When second uncle discovered it, he became furious. He believed his son was neglecting proper pursuits. Relations among the men of the second branch grew increasingly strained. Then several elders of the Xiao clan formally proposed discussing a reserve heir. They phrased it politely. Their meaning was obvious. Yes, Xiao Yinxi now had 2 sons, but his health was poor and both boys had been born as twins and somewhat early. What if something happened in the future? Would it not be safer to select another boy from a collateral branch and leave him in reserve? I listened and almost laughed. Why were these people so obsessed with worrying that someone else's bloodline might die out? Did none of them have lives of their own to manage? Xiao Yinxi looked at me. Do you want to attend? Yes. Afraid it will be troublesome? Yes. I stood. But I'm even more afraid they'll keep coming back if we don't settle it. Then we'll settle it once. He rose too. You say what you want to say. I'll handle the rest. I looked at him. That had become the most comfortable thing about our marriage. My affairs, I spoke for myself. His relatives, he dealt with the aftermath. Neither of us tried to take over the other person's life. The clan meeting was not a grand affair, no banquet, no hall full of guests, only a modest council chamber beside the ancestral hall. The elders of the Xiao clan sat around us. Second uncle spoke first. Yanxi's health has been uncertain for many years. Jinghong and Jingzhou are still young. The princely household cannot afford to make no preparations. Keeping one reserve heir would provide stability for the clan. I sat beside Xiao Yinxi. I did not interrupt. I waited for him to finish, then I asked, who does second uncle want as this reserve heir? He paused. What? The reserve heir. Mingjin or Mingche? Xiao Qinzhen frowned. That would naturally depend on the clan. I nodded, then asked whether they want it. His expression changed. This concerns the ancestral line. How can children decide? They are nearly 20. They are not children. I spoke evenly. If one is formally designated as a reserve heir, does that mean he may someday be adopted into the main household? Naturally. Then what happens to the property and inheritance he would originally receive in the second branch? Xiao Qinzhen said nothing. I continued. And if 20 years from now Yinxi is still alive and Jinghong and Jingzhou are also alive, what happens to this reserve heir? Does he keep waiting? Waiting for Yinxi to die? Waiting for something to happen to our 2 sons? The room went dead silent. One elder frowned. There is no need to speak so harshly. I looked at him. But that is what it means. A reserve heir exists only because everyone assumes the main household may one day have no descendants. We currently have 2 legitimate sons. Both are healthy. So what exactly are we preparing for? No one answered. I continued. Let us go even further. Suppose we truly choose one. From this day onward, should his tuition, writing lessons, social expenses, and future marriage all be paid according to the standards of the main household? If the main household pays, what about our 2 sons? If the second branch pays, why should their other children receive less? This is not something that can be brushed aside with the words for the good of the clan. Second uncle's face grew darker and darker. At last, he slammed his palm on the table. You're a woman. What do you understand about ancestral succession? Before I could answer, Xiao Yinxi quietly set down his teacup. Second uncle. His voice was not loud. She is the young madam of this household. She is Jinghong and Jingzhou's mother. Of course she understands. Xiao Qingyin's chest rose sharply. Yinxi, don't forget. Back then, if it were not for what, second uncle? Xiao Yinxi looked at him. When I was gravely ill as a child, you helped ease my mother's fears. I am grateful. But gratitude does not mean I owe you my entire life. The room went completely silent. I turned to look at him. His face was still pale. He was still thin, but his back was straight. Mingjin and Mingche are my cousins. They are not my reserve sons. From today onward, Prince Jingan's household will have no reserve heir. Second uncle opened his mouth again. Then a voice came from outside. I don't want it either. Everyone turned. Xiao Mingche stood in the doorway. From his expression, he had clearly been listening for some time. Xiao Qinzhen snapped, "Who told you to come here?" No one. I came myself. Mingche entered and bowed to the clan elders. Then he faced his father. Father, I don't want to be anyone's reserve heir. I have already taken over the 2 shops mother gave me. I only want to live my own life. Xiao Qingyan's face turned almost green. Do you even understand what you are saying? I do. And your brother? At some point, Xiao Mingjin had also appeared outside. He stood in silence for a long time, then entered. I don't want to keep waiting either. Those words did more damage than any account book ever could. Second uncle seemed to lose all his strength at once. For more than 10 years, he had told his sons that one of them might someday become heir to the main branch, so they had to compete, outperform each other, suppress each other, become worthy of being chosen. And now, when the choice was finally placed before them, neither wanted it. The clan meeting ended quickly. The matter of a reserve heir was formally abandoned. Every remaining second branch expense that had still been attached to the main household was stopped. Mingjin began preparing a future of his own. Mingche continued in business. Second Madame Zhao almost appeared relieved. Only second uncle stayed away from the main household for a very long time. I did not feel triumphant. Mostly, I found it absurd. Building your entire future upon the hope that someone else would die childless had never been a particularly sensible plan. That night, Princess Cui came to see Xiao Yanxi. I intended to leave them alone. She asked me to stay. She sat there for a long time. At last, she said, Yanxi, when I let Mingjin spend so much time in the main household all those years ago, it was not because I did not want you to recover. I was simply too afraid that you would not. Xiao Yanxi said nothing. Her eyes reddened. But now that I think back, I arranged for what would happen after your death far too early. I'm sorry. For the first time, I saw Xiao Yanxi look genuinely stunned. He did not immediately tell her that it was all right. He remained silent for a long time. Then he said, then don't arrange it anymore. Princess Cui laughed through her tears. All right. I thought we might finally enjoy some peace after that. 6 months later, I smelled a bowl of fish soup at dinner. I turned my head and vomited. The entire table went silent. I gripped the edge of the table. Slowly, I looked at Xiao Yanxi. He looked at me. The color visibly drained from his face. I clenched my teeth. Don't tell me. Wisely, he said nothing. The household physician arrived the next day. For the 3rd time, a pregnancy pulse. I closed my eyes. Of course. One should never make careless declarations before the heavens. Retirement, peace, lies, all of it. When I became pregnant for the 3rd time, the reaction throughout the Jing'an household was strange. No one cheered. Everyone simply went silent. Princess Cui held her prayer beads. She looked at me, then at the 4 children running through the courtyard. After a very long pause, she said, "Perhaps we should first have the physician examine you very carefully." I nearly laughed. She had been the person most afraid that I would not have enough children. Now she was the person most afraid that I would produce any more. The physician examined me thoroughly. He said I had recovered well, but twin pregnancies were indeed harder on the body than ordinary pregnancies. It would be best not to have them too close together. That evening, Xiao Yinxi and I sat together on the couch. Neither of us spoke. Finally, he said, "We already have enough children." I looked at him. "So if you do not want this one, you do not have to keep it." His voice was calm. There was no testing me, no reluctance, not even "but it is my child too." He simply placed the choice in front of me. I lowered my eyes to my stomach, which showed no sign yet, and suddenly remembered the third pregnancy of my previous life. I had recently miscarried. The physician had said I should rest for at least a year, but my mother-in-law wanted a grandson. Xin Shiwan had said, "Mother is getting old." Try to understand her. No one had asked whether I was afraid. No one had asked whether I wanted another pregnancy. At the time, I thought that was simply what marriage meant. Women endured. That was all. Now I knew better. After a long silence, I asked, "What if I want to keep it?" "Then we keep it." "You're not afraid there will be two again?" This time, he went silent too. From outside came Lingxia's shriek, "Brother fell in the pond." Another voice immediately shouted, "Not the pond, the mud pit." Xiao Yinxi closed his eyes. I burst out laughing. "Why aren't you telling me that twins are impossible?" He looked toward the window. At this point, I no longer dare. In the end, I chose to keep the baby. Not for the title, not for the household, not because anyone pressured me, but because I wanted to. Then my belly grew larger, and for the third time, the physician wore that familiar expression. I stared at him. "Just say it." He coughed. "Young madam, I'm afraid." I finished for him. "Twins again?" The physician nodded. I immediately turned toward Xiao Yinxi. "This is all your fault." He was astonishingly calm. "Yes." "You admit it." It would seem difficult for me to deny responsibility. I picked up a cushion and threw it at him. He laughed and moved. The third pregnancy gave us one boy and one girl. That made 6 children. Prince Jing'an's manor completely lost control. Once, the main household had been the quietest place in the entire estate. Xiao Yinxi was frail. Even the servants had walked softly around his rooms. Now, every morning, the first thing I heard was not birdsong, it was children. "Where are my shoes?" Second brother stole my cake. Grandmother, elder sister took the fish out of the pond. Father, little sister hid your medicine. One day, I was reviewing accounts when Princess Chui stormed into the room. "Gu Wantong!" I leapt to my feet. "What happened?" She held up a handprint covered in black ink. "Who pressed this onto the Buddhist scripture I just copied?" I looked behind her. 6 children stood in a line. Every one of them looked angelic. I struggled not to laugh. "I don't know." "You are their mother. And you are their grandmother." Princess Chui stared at me. In the end, she marched all 6 away. "Every one of you, wash your hands." I watched her leave, then collapsed laughing over the table. Who could have imagined it a few years earlier? This woman had worried every day that her son would die without descendants. Now her greatest problem was having too many grandchildren. The second branch gradually quieted down. Mingche managed his shops very well. Mingjin stopped spending every day in the main household. Eventually, he left the capital to manage one of the clan estates. Second uncle remained displeased, but he never mentioned a reserve heir again. Life had a way of forcing people forward. Not everyone repented. Not every relationship needed reconciliation. Sometimes clear boundaries were enough. Everyone could live their own life, that was sufficient. What I had not expected was that once our 6 children grew older, Prince Jingin's manner did not become quieter, it became louder, because they started bringing friends home. One afternoon, I sat beneath the veranda watching more than a dozen children race across the courtyard. Suddenly, I remembered what I had promised myself on the day I was reborn. This life, I would lie down and take it easy. I lowered my eyes to the account book in my hands, then raised them to the courtyard full of children. I was silent for a very long time. Fine. Life was full of surprises. More than 10 years passed. The 2 osmanthus trees in our courtyard truly grew tall. Their branches spread wide enough to shade half the courtyard in summer. The stone table had already been replaced once. The original had been cracked when several of our children decided, in their younger years, that hitting stone with other stones was excellent entertainment. Xiao Yinshi was now in his 30s. He was still sickly, he coughed every winter, sometimes developed a fever when the seasons changed. He still took medicine regularly. Aside from that, he remained very much alive. And his habits were far more disciplined than those of half the supposedly robust men in the capital. Other men drank until midnight, he went to bed on time. Other men galloped off hunting, he walked 3 measured circles around the garden. Other men ate rich meat at every meal, he drank porridge. Sometimes I watched him and thought that perhaps the 90 years of his previous life had never been an accident. Our 6 children were all different. Lingyi liked to count and eventually volunteered to manage the bookshop. Lingjia loved plants and spent her days at the herb farm. Jinghong was the steadiest. Jingzhao had the sweetest tongue. Of the youngest twins, one was quiet and one could shake the roof off the house. None of them were miraculous geniuses. None of them had to follow a path we chose. Xiao Yinshi treated them the same way. If they wanted to study, they studied. If they wanted to learn business, they learned business. If they truly hated something, they could change direction. At first, Princess Cui still worried about all of them. Then 6 grandchildren wore down whatever remained of her determination. As long as no one caused a catastrophe, she stopped caring. And strangely enough, the older I became, the less I worked. In my previous life, I had always believed that if I stopped watching everything, the household would collapse. This life taught me otherwise. If the accountants could do something, I let them do it. If the stewards could handle it, I let them handle it. If the matter belonged to the children, they learned to deal with it themselves. Between husband and wife, whoever had more energy did a little more. Whoever was tired rested. I did not truly abandon all responsibility. I simply never emptied myself again. One afternoon, Xiao Yinshi and I sat beneath the osmanthus trees. Our youngest daughter suddenly ran toward us. Mother? Yes. Why does father have to drink medicine every day? Without even lifting my head, I said, because he has to live to 90. She accepted that answer with a simple, oh. Then she ran away. Beside me, Xiao Yinshi slowly turned his head. 90 is enough. I stiffened. I had said it so many times over the years that I had forgotten myself. I looked at him. What? You think 90 is too little? He held his teacup, his expression perfectly calm. Didn't you want to take life easy? When we have grandchildren, someone will have to help you watch them. I laughed. You're planning awfully far ahead. You were the one who planned first. His gaze followed his toward the osmanthus trees, and suddenly I remembered our first meeting. He had been 22, pale, thin, sitting beside a bowl of medicine. Everyone had believed he had almost no future. Only I had known that he would live to 90. So I had said carelessly, by the time you're 60, those trees will shade half the courtyard. Looking back now, what I gave him had never truly been the answer 90. It was something else. For the first time in his life, someone had placed him inside a distant future. And what he gave me had never truly been the royal stipend or a title or a house full of children. He taught me that marriage did not have to mean exhaustion. Loving someone did not require emptying yourself until nothing remained. I could love my husband, love my children, manage a household, work, and still say I was tired, still say no, still say I did not want to deal with something today. I did not have to burn myself dry like a lamp before I had earned the right to illuminate everyone else. When I was dying in my previous life, everyone told me I had lived a complete and blessed life. At the time, I had not understood what fulfillment actually meant. Now I thought I did. It was not being praised for virtue. It was not having halls filled with descendants. It was not marrying into the grandest possible family. It was looking back over your life and knowing that every important choice had been one you had truly wanted to make. Just then, the courtyard gate burst open. 2 of Jingzhou's children came charging inside. Grandmother! Grandfather! My eyelid twitched. The smaller one dove straight under my skirt. The older one threw himself against Xiao Yanxi's legs. Grandfather, take us to buy sweets. Xiao Yanxi slowly looked at me. His expression said everything. See? What did I tell you? Someone has to take care of the grandchildren. I pressed a hand to my forehead. So much for taking life easy. I bent down and pulled the small head out from under my skirts. Stand properly. Grandmother isn't taking you today. The child blinked. Why? Because grandmother is lying down and taking life easy. What does that mean? I thought for a moment, then pointed at Xiao Yanxi. It means your grandfather takes you instead. Xiao Yanxi stared at me. I rose, smoothed my skirts, and walked toward the house. Behind me came 2 immediate cheers, then Xiao Yanxi's helpless voice. Slow down. I smiled without turning around. This time, I could safely leave the noise behind me in someone else's hands. As for tomorrow, tomorrow could deal with itself. After all, that sickly young lord everyone had once expected to die within a few years still had decades left to spend slowly living beside me. Bonus story: the entire manor hunts the medicine thief. Xiao Yanxi's medicine disappeared. It happened on an otherwise perfectly ordinary morning. I was eating breakfast when Qingdai hurried in. Young madam, something's wrong. I still had half an osmanthus cake in my hand. What happened? 1 packet of the young lord's medicine is missing. I paused. 1 packet? It was definitely on the second shelf of the medicine cabinet last night, but when we went to get it this morning, it was gone. My first reaction was not fear. I looked toward the courtyard. We had 6 children now. The oldest could already climb trees. Even the youngest had learned how to drag stools across rooms to reach forbidden things. So whenever something disappeared from this household, my first suspect was never a thief. It was the children. I put down my cake. Bring all 6 of them here. A quarter of an hour later, 6 children stood in a neat row. Lingyi looked the calmest. Lingjia's eyes kept drifting sideways. Jinghong wore an expression of pure innocence. Jingzhou was smiling far too brightly. The youngest twins stared at the floor, nudging each other's toes. I took one look at them. Excellent. At least 3 looked guilty. I put on my sternest face. Who took your father's medicine? 6 heads shook at once. We don't know. I looked at Jingzhou. Why are you smiling? He immediately stopped. Your son was born cheerful. Yesterday you cried because someone ate 1 extra piece of meat. And today you were suddenly born cheerful. Jingzhou fell silent. Xiao Yanqi happened to walk in from outside just then, wearing a light outer robe. What happened? I looked at him. Someone stole your medicine. His expression was astonishingly calm. Oh. I stared. That's all you have to say? What else should I say? That was your medicine. Missing 1 dose won't kill me. That is not what you used to say. He sat down. I did not have 6 suspects in the house before. The 6 children were silent. I struggled not to laugh, then I began the interrogation. Lingyi. Yes, mother. Did you enter the medicine room yesterday? No. Lingjia. Yes. I immediately looked at her. Why? To get floral tonic. Did you touch the medicine? No. Her answer came quickly. She did not look as though she were lying. I turned to Jinghong. You? I was in the study all afternoon yesterday. Anyone who can prove that? My tutor. Then I looked at Jingzhou. His eyes rolled once. You what? I passed by. Only passed by. I happened to go inside and look around. I narrowed my eyes. Look at what? He smiled weakly. I wanted to see whether father's medicine really tastes as bitter as everyone says. And then? Then I left. Finally, I turned to the youngest twins. Both stared at the floor. One twisted the end of a sleeve, the other stared very intensely at his shoes. I understood immediately. You too, look at me. Our youngest daughter raised her head first. Her lips were already pouting. Her twin brother followed. He looked 1 breath away from tears. I softened my voice. Where is the medicine? Our daughter hesitated for a long time, then whispered, We fed it to the fish. I stared at her. Xiao Yanqi stared at her. The entire room fell silent. I wondered if I had heard incorrectly. You fed what? The fish. She pointed toward the courtyard. 4th brother said father's medicine helps people live a very long time. I wanted the fish to live a very long time too. My head snapped toward Jingzhou, 4th brother. His face changed instantly. It wasn't me. His little brother immediately pointed at him. 4th brother said it. Jingzhou froze. I slapped the table. Xiao Jingzhou. He turned and ran. I jumped up after him. You stop right there. The courtyard exploded into chaos. Jingzhou ran while shouting, I only said father lives a long time because he drinks medicine. I never told them to steal it. Grandmother, save me. Princess Cui had just stepped into the courtyard. She did not even understand what was happening before Jingzhou dove behind her. Grandmother, save me. I stopped in front of her. Please move aside. Princess Chui instinctively shielded her grandson. Talk things through calmly. He taught his younger siblings to steal their father's medicine and feed it to the fish. Princess Chui went silent. Then very slowly, she stepped aside. Jingzhou stared at her in horror. Grandmother, grandmother, don't you love me most? Princess Chui looked expressionless. Not today. In the end, the entire household marched to the fish pond. The missing packet had clearly been emptied into the water. Several koi swam around as usual. If anything, they looked unusually energetic. Our youngest daughter crouched beside the pond and asked very seriously, "Mother, will they live to 90 now?" I covered my forehead. Fish do not live to 90. She looked deeply disappointed. Then the medicine was wasted. Beside me, Xiao Yanqi laughed. I turned. You are laughing. Yes. That was your medicine. I know. Those are your fish too. They are probably more valuable now. I had no response. He deserved to have his medicine stolen. Later, we established new household rules. The medicine room was to be locked. Only adults could keep the keys. Jingzhou was punished with copying the family rules 10 times. The youngest twins were forbidden from approaching the fish pond for 1 month. 3 days later, I passed the medicine room. Xiao Yanqi was standing outside holding the lock. I stopped. What happened? He was silent for a moment. The key is missing. I stared at him. That afternoon, the entire manor began its second thief hunt. The keys were eventually found beside the fattest koi in the pond. Wet, dripping. I stood beside the water and looked at our 6 children. At that moment, I suddenly thought, whether Xiao Yanqi would live to 90 was uncertain, but these children might anger me all the way to 80. Bonus story, the princess finally regrets praying for grandchildren. When Princess Chui was young, her greatest wish was simple. She wanted Prince Jingan's household to have more children. Everyone in the manor knew that. Especially after my first pregnancy produced 2 daughters. She adored them, but at night she would still quietly visit the Buddhist hall. I knew what she prayed for. Grandsons. Then came my second pregnancy, 2 grandsons. She was so delighted that she barely slept for 3 days. Then came my third pregnancy, 1 boy, 1 girl. After that, she stopped praying. Not only did she stop, she began telling me, "Wantong, please don't have any more children." I laughed at her. "Mother, that is not what you used to say." She sat there holding her prayer beads, looking world-weary. I was foolish when I was younger. I thought she was exaggerating until one summer when the household held a small lotus viewing gathering. Several elderly ladies from the clan attended. One of them watched our children running all over the courtyard and sighed enviously. "Princess, you are truly blessed. 6 grandchildren. What a lively household." Princess Chui smiled with perfect dignity. Yes. The moment the word left her mouth, bang. Everyone turned. Jingzhou and his younger brother had pushed a wooden basin off the top of the artificial hill. The basin rolled all the way down, then landed directly over a steward's head. The steward stood there completely stunned. Princess Chui's smile froze. "Xiao Jingzhou." Jingzhou saw disaster approaching and immediately ran. At the same time, Lingjie rushed over carrying a large white goose. "Grandmother, it bit me." The goose was trapped under her arm, flapping wildly. White feathers flew everywhere. The elderly guest hurried to dodge. Before she could escape, our youngest daughter came running with one shoe in her hand. Grandmother, brother's shoe fell into the lotus pond. A vein pulsed at Princess Chui's temple. She took a deep breath, then turned back to the elderly lady with a smile. Many children. The household does become somewhat lively. The old woman was still envious. Lively is good. Princess Chui said nothing. I stood nearby. I nearly laughed aloud. At lunch, the 6 children were finally forced to sit at the same table. For the first quarter of an hour, everything went surprisingly well. Then Jingzhou reached across the table and tried to steal a rib from Jinghong's bowl. Jinghong slapped his chopsticks away. Lingjia accused Jingzhou of having no manners. Jingzhou immediately announced that Lingjia had secretly eaten sweets the day before. Lingjia became furious. The youngest boy took advantage of the chaos and spilled soup over his sister's skirt. She started crying. Then, for reasons no one understood, 3 others began shouting too. The side hall sounded like a boiling cauldron. The visiting old lady was still sighing happily. So many children. So much fortune. Princess Chui turned her prayer beads faster and faster. Watching her, I genuinely worried she might rub sparks out of them. After the guests left, she summoned all 6 children. Who caused the most trouble today? All 6 pointed at Jingzhou. Jingzhou stared at them in betrayal. How could you do this to me? Princess Chui looked at him. Do you have anything to say? Grandmother, I am simply lively. Lively, yes. She gritted her teeth. Then tomorrow, you may spend the entire morning being lively in the ancestral hall. Jingzhou wilted immediately. The other 5 tried not to laugh. Princess Chui suddenly turned toward them. You 5 are going to. Their smiles disappeared. That evening, I visited her courtyard with freshly made pastries. She was sitting there rubbing her forehead. I deliberately asked, Mother? She looked up. Yes. That old lady said today that having many children brings great fortune. Why didn't you look happy? She stared at me. Wantong, do you know what I regret most now? What? When you were pregnant the first time, I made a vow in the Buddhist hall. I became interested. What did you ask for? Her face remained expressionless. I said that if the Jing'an household could have a flourishing bloodline, I would gladly eat vegetarian food for 10 years. I struggled not to laugh. And then? Then you gave birth to twins. I was delighted. So I went back to fulfill my vow. Then the second pregnancy produced another 2. I became even more delighted. And then the third, she closed her eyes. At that point, I suspected the Buddha had misunderstood me. I finally lost control. I collapsed across the table laughing. Princess Chui looked at me coldly. You still have the nerve to laugh. Mother, I'm sorry. But I really... Tomorrow, all 6 children are going to your courtyard. My laughter stopped instantly. Why? I would like one peaceful vegetarian day. I stared at her. Revenge came quickly. The next morning, all 6 children appeared outside my courtyard exactly on time. Each carried a tiny bundle. Jingzhou looked especially delighted. Mother, grandmother said we all belong to you today. I turned. Xiao Yinshi was preparing to leave. I grabbed his sleeve. Where are you going? The bookshop. No. He looked at me. Why? I pointed toward the 6 children at our gate. Husband and wife are birds of the same forest. Today, neither bird is flying anywhere. Xiao Yinshi was silent for a long time. Then he quietly pulled his foot back inside. That day, I finally understood why Princess Cui had left the manor early in the morning to burn incense. She had not gone to fulfill a vow. She had gone to escape. Bonus story: how 6 children completely destroyed the sickly young lord's healthy lifestyle. Xiao Yinshi lived a long life. I had always believed there was a reason for it. He did not drink alcohol. He did not stay up late. He stopped eating before he was completely full. He never forced himself outdoors during freezing weather. Every day, he walked 3 fixed circuits around the garden. He took his medicine exactly on time. Even the physician said, if the young lord continues caring for himself this carefully, living a long life is entirely possible. Every time I heard that, I thought, of course it is. 90. But after we had 6 children, his carefully disciplined health regimen became harder to maintain by the day. The first casualty was sleep. In the past, once late evening arrived, Xiao Yinshi went straight to bed. Nothing could interfere. Then the children were born. Babies cried at night. He woke with them. When they grew older, they stopped crying at night. Instead, they started sneaking out of their rooms. One night, well after midnight, I woke to the sound of a door. I opened my eyes. Xiao Yinshi was gone. My heart jumped. I threw on an outer robe and hurried outside. I found him in the kitchen. He was wearing his sleeping robe. In his hands was a bowl of freshly cooked noodles. Jingzhao sat in front of him, also dressed for bed and looking extremely guilty. I stopped in the doorway. "What are you two doing?" Both turned. Xiao Yinshi answered first. He was hungry. "So you are cooking noodles for him in the middle of the night?" "Yes." "You never eat after your bedtime." He fell silent. Jingzhao immediately jumped in. "Mother, I forced father." I looked at him. "How?" Jingzhao thought carefully. I told him I was too hungry to sleep. I stared. That was forced. The next day, I thought the matter was over. At midnight the following night, the kitchen light came on again. I charged inside. This time, there were 2 additional accomplices, Lingjia and our youngest daughter. Not only noodles were on the table. There was also steamed milk custard. I stood in the doorway. Xiao Yinshi saw me, then asked with perfect calm, "Would you like some?" I laughed from pure disbelief. "You call this preserving your health?" He looked at his bowl. "Occasionally." "You were also occasionally doing this last night." The children tried not to laugh. I slapped the doorframe. From today onward, no one enters the kitchen after midnight. The 3rd night, the kitchen remained dark. I was very satisfied. Then I woke in the morning. There were 4 empty bowls in the study. I stared at them. Excellent. They had simply relocated the battlefield. Next came his evening walks. Every night after dinner, Xiao Yinshi walked 3 circles around the garden. Once, he walked alone. Then I began walking with him. Then the children started following us. When 6 children joined in, 3 calm circuits of the garden became something entirely different. During the first circle, everyone behaved. During the second, Jingzhao began challenging everyone to races. By the third, all 6 were running. Xiao Yinshi stood behind them, expressionless. I asked, you're not chasing them? Running is not part of my health regimen. What about the children? They'll come back when they're tired. It turned out he was right. A quarter of an hour later, all 6 came back asking for food. Finally, there was his medicine. Everyone in the Jing'an household knew it tasted bitter. Before we had children, he simply drank it. After the children discovered that father got candied fruit after medicine, things began to spiral. Jingzhou was the first to question the injustice. Father gets candied fruit every day. Why don't we? Because you don't drink medicine. He became thoughtful. The next day, he went to the household physician. Doctor, I'm sick. The physician nearly jumped. What hurts? My mouth is greedy. The physician stared at him. The next day, all 6 children lined up before the physician. Every one of them claimed to be ill. One had a headache, one had a sore leg, one claimed to have chest pain. The youngest gave the most ridiculous diagnosis of all. Reading hurts. The physician was so tormented that he nearly resigned. In the end, Xiao Yanqi announced a new rule. Every child could have 1 piece of candied fruit a day, no illness required. That should have solved the problem. A few days later, however, I discovered that Xiao Yanqi had none left for himself. I asked, "Where is yours?" I gave them away. To whom? He looked toward the courtyard. 6 children were standing there, each one chewing. I rubbed my forehead. Your medicine is that bitter, and you aren't eating anything sweet afterward. I'm used to it. I looked at him. For some reason, my heart softened. That evening, I specifically ordered the kitchen to prepare a new box. I placed it on his table. These are only for you. He raised a brow. The children cannot have any. No. Why? Because your wife gave them to you. I said it with complete confidence. He smiled, picked up 1 piece. Before he could put it into his mouth, 6 heads appeared around the doorway. Father. Xiao Yanqi's hand stopped. Jingzhou spoke first. We saw everything. Lingjia followed immediately. Mother is playing favorites. Our youngest daughter ran inside and wrapped herself around my leg. Mother, I want candied fruit from a wife too. I stared at her. Xiao Yanqi immediately started laughing so hard that he coughed. I glared. Is this very funny? He coughed and nodded at the same time. A little. In the end, the entire box was divided among them. I did not get a single piece. Xiao Yanqi only managed to save 2. That night before bed, I looked at him. I'm beginning to suspect something. What? In your previous life, maybe you lived to 90 because you did not have this many children. He turned his head. Previous life? My heart jumped. I mean, hypothetically. He looked at me for a moment. He did not ask further. Instead, he smiled. Then losing a few years in this life would not be so terrible. I frowned. Nonsense. What? You are not allowed to lose even 1 year before 90. He laughed. That strict? Of course. I tucked the blankets around him. You need to help me take care of our grandchildren. He was silent for 2 breaths. So that is the reason. What else would it be? I rolled over and closed my eyes. A moment later, I heard his voice behind me. Do you want any? No. Starting tomorrow, I am going back to sleeping on time. I smiled with my eyes closed. Good. And if the children get hungry again, let them be hungry. The following night, I woke up. The place beside me was empty again. I walked to the kitchen. Sure enough, Xiaoyanqi was crouched beside the stove. 6 children were gathered around him in a circle. A pot of noodles bubbled merrily over the fire. I stood in the doorway, silent for a very long time. Xiaoyanqi turned around. He looked remarkably composed. Tonight is a special case. I folded my arms. What exactly is special about tonight? Our youngest daughter raised her hand. I dreamed about noodles. I stared at all of them. Excellent. At last, I understood completely. Healthy living, self-discipline, it did not matter. As long as you had enough children in the house, they could cure you of all of it.